that environmental justice advocates are anti-business and anti-economics, and what we're saying is that we are for economics and we are for sustainability. We are for jobs, but not at the expense of our health and our community. And for a long time, people saying that, well, you can't have economic growth and you can't have development without having pollution. And we say that's not true. That is not true. It's, we see communities, middle class white communities that have all of it. And we're saying, well, why can't, working class, low income communities of color have the same? And so if you look at the fact that the highest unemployment generally is among low income and people of color. And so those groups want jobs and they need jobs, and oftentimes the dirty jobs are forced upon them. And so I think it's important that when we talk about growing a green jobs and a green movement, that it can be very helpful for those communities that oftentimes that have gotten the dirty industries and the dirty jobs, and in some cases very low paying jobs and unhealthy jobs. And so economics and equity and justice and sustainability, these are all things that we have basically said these are the underlying principles of our movement. And we're not just an anti-toxics movement. We are also for benefits, getting the benefits from having clean fuels and public transportation that is accessible to jobs. We're for the idea that we want to have schools that are green. We want to have parks and green space. We know those things are healthy. We want to have our parks and playgrounds that our kids can go to and get outside and play, and in some cases be a deterrent for childhood obesity. The physical environment and the built environment are very key factors when it comes to health. The fact that our communities are inundated with fast food, greasy spoon outlets, and our neighborhoods are plastered with smoking and alcohol, advertising, and in many cases, half of our neighborhoods in the country don't have full-service grocery stores or access to fresh fruits and vegetables. So when you talk about those things as the built environment and as impact on health and economics and jobs, it's all interrelated. I've written 14 books that deal with these issues, and it's just one book, but don't tell anybody. It deals with health. It deals with environment. It deals with transportation. It deals with access to jobs. It deals with having green space and livable space, those kinds of things. And when you start saying the environment is everything, it's where people live, work, play, worship, go to school, as well as the physical and natural world. Some of the environmental groups say that's too much. We just deal with wildlife. We just deal with birds, and we just deal with ducks unlimited. We just deal with wildland and wilderness. So that we say that we want to have the environment deal in totality. So that means that we need to have a multidisciplinary approach to the issues that we are confronted. So it means that we want to have journalists and psychologists and sociologists and lawyers and economists and toxicologists and epidemiologists in the room to talk about how we're going to work together on this. It's not just a room full of lawyers and who's going to work out, or economists who are going to work out the cost benefits of it and whether or not it's legal. And we say many of the things that may be legal may be immoral and unethical and detrimental to the sustainability of communities and us as a people. And that's why I think the environmental justice movement has taken the high ground and in many cases has acted as the conscience for the larger movement. And I think that's a role that I think we should play because of the fact that in many cases the environmental justice groups and organizations and individuals that are involved can see the big picture and can understand and empathize with communities and individuals that have been invisible for too long, and now they're being given a voice and a seat at the table to correct that. Not just correct it for their community, but correct it for all.
Absolutely. It makes the invisible visible, and it really helps. Environmental justice is helping people to make these connections, to realize a healthy environment is about a healthy community, and that leads to a healthy economy, and that these things can't be separated out.
That's right. That's right.
When in looking at presidential candidates, is there anyone who stands out for you as an environmental justice ally?
Well, I have to look at the Democratic Party have the most visible environmental justice activists and candidates and active platforms. And I have to say that going back to the days when I was working on this and when President Clinton signed that executive order and moving the environmental justice agenda, and the fact that the Senate first Senate hearing on environmental justice was held this past July in the Senate, and so I think it is important to understand who's in power in Congress and who's in the White House. I haven't decided who I'm going to vote for yet, but I do know that Democrats seem to have an edge when it comes to getting environmental justice on the radar and moving through the political process. But I have to also say that it was not, environmental justice was not when it comes to the federal government, was not started under the Democrat. It was started under the first Bush administration, and the EPA administrator William Riley was able to initiate environmental justice equity report and set up the environmental justice office. And so I just want to make sure that you understand that environmental justice is not a Democratic issue, not a Republican issue, but it does matter who's moving the agenda. The fact that the current Bush administration has basically allowed environmental justice to kind of become invisible, and in some cases attempts have been made to dismantle environmental justice office and work that regulations and orders that were moving in the right direction. The executive order that Clinton signed was not rescinded, but if you don't enforce it, it's almost tantamount to rescinding it.
Right. It goes back to what you were saying before. It's not, we don't have black and white air, and we don't have red and blue air. We
No.
all need these things.
We all need this, and I think when we understand that and say that we have to, there's some things that cut across, party lines, and this is one of those.
So you've been described as the father of environmental justice. That's a pretty big title. So who are the mothers, or who gives you the most hope in the world around EJ?
Well, I think there's so many leaders and so many founders and contributors. I've been working on this for so long, and the fact that the woman that comes to mind in terms of the image is Hazel Johnson of Chicago. She has been around many years, and her People for Community Recovery on the South Side of Chicago was a EJ organization that was around when environmental justice was baby. And I think the issues that permeate on the South Side are so pervasive that it's almost like you have to give it credit for staying with it and sticking to it and really getting the voice of environmental justice from a community's perspective to resonate not just in this country but around the world. And I think she's provided a role model for many women and men, for that matter, to follow in terms of the tenacity of fighting odds that big companies and government that basically said that your community does not count, and to some extent your community is a throwaway community. And she said no, and she fought and as I said, put environmental justice on the map as an activist, as a leader, and I have to take my hat off to Hazel. But there are a number of people who, organizations who have taken on these issues and have stayed with it. And when you stop something and you something, another facility is being proposed, and when you're trying to get decent and affordable housing, and then you're trying to get, new schools, and the issues are so pervasive and never ending when it comes to what you're fighting. It takes a special person or special personality to work on this on these issues because it's a 24/7 type of operation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Dr. Bullard, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today.